They thought he was just another traveler, quietly boarding a flight like everyone else. But this man wasn't here for vacation, and he wasn't here for business either. Wearing a simple hoodie, a worn backpack, and no security detail in sight, Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, walked past airport security unnoticed. What happened next would leave intelligence agencies stunned and the airport's chief security officer out of a job. It was early morning at a bustling international airport. Passengers moved in every direction, some rushing to their gates, others sipping coffee near the terminals. In the middle of this chaos, a tall man in plain clothes stood in line at the check-in counter. No entourage, no flashing cameras, no presidential insignia. Nobody knew this was Ibrahim Traoré, one of the most heavily guarded leaders in Africa. Security cameras captured him handing over a small, slightly worn passport. It wasn't the diplomatic kind you'd expect, just a regular civilian passport under an alias. Weeks earlier, intelligence reports had warned him. There were threats against his life, not just in Burkina Faso, but abroad. Foreign agents had been trying to track his movements, hoping for an opportunity to strike. But Traoré had a different plan. Instead of surrounding himself with dozens of bodyguards, he decided to travel like a ghost, blending in with the crowd. For him, this was not just a test of personal security. It was a mission to prove a point about how leaders can stay connected to the people without being trapped in an ivory tower of privilege. At the first checkpoint, airport security barely glanced at him. The X-ray machine beeped once, but the distracted guard waved him through without inspection. No one questioned the heavy jacket he wore or the oddly shaped object in his carry-on. It wasn't dangerous, but if it had been, the consequences could have been catastrophic. This was a massive breach in airport protocol, and Traoré noticed. He boarded economy class, taking a window seat between two unsuspecting passengers, a student traveling home and a businessman glued to his laptop. During the flight, he quietly observed the cabin crew, the passengers, and even the behavior of undercover air marshals. At one point, a curious passenger sitting across from him said, "You look a lot like that African president." Traoré smiled slightly and replied, "I get that sometimes." When the plane landed, local security forces were waiting, but not for him. They were there for a completely unrelated drug bust. As passengers streamed off the plane, Traoré simply walked past them, carrying his backpack, blending in with the crowd once again. It wasn't until hours later, when news broke that the president of Burkina Faso had been spotted in the city, that airport officials realized what had happened. Their security system had just failed the ultimate test. Within 24 hours, headlines exploded. President boards commercial flight without security, airport officials stunned. Some praised his courage, calling it a bold stand against the bubble of power. Others criticized him, saying he'd risked too much and exposed dangerous flaws in international security. But for Traoré, the point had been made. Not all leaders need to be untouchable, and sometimes the truth about security is only revealed when someone dares to challenge it. Later, in a rare interview, Traoré hinted at the reason behind his trip. It's easy to lead from behind a wall. It's harder to walk among your people, but that's where a leader learns the truth. His undercover journey sparked debates in political circles, intelligence agencies, and even among everyday citizens. And somewhere in that airport's dusty security office, the footage of that day still plays. A reminder that even the most powerful man can walk right past you if you're not paying attention. In a crowded airport, thousands of travelers rushed to catch flights. But one man wasn't there for vacation. Hidden under a plain hoodie and worn sneakers, he moved like everyone else, quietly, invisibly. But this man was no ordinary passenger. He was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, walking straight past airport security without anyone realizing. By the time they found out, it was too late. The terminal smelled of fresh coffee and airplane fuel. Families hugged goodbye, business travelers argued on the phone, and announcements echoed from overhead speakers. Through the sliding glass doors came a tall figure, carrying nothing more than a modest backpack. No motorcade, no waving flags, no bulletproof vest. only a pair of sunglasses shielding eyes that had stared down war and political turmoil. Traoré didn't walk like a head of state. He walked like a man with somewhere important to be, but who couldn't afford to draw attention. His plan was simple: get through the airport without a single person realizing who he was. Weeks earlier, intelligence sources warned of possible assassination attempts abroad. Foreign agents were watching his movements. Every public appearance was a potential ambush. But Traoré wasn't the kind of leader who hid behind walls and tinted windows. This trip had a purpose. He wanted to see something, meet someone, without the interference of handlers or the intimidation of a security convoy. He chose to become invisible. He swapped his diplomatic passport for a regular one issued under a different name. No one in his government, apart from 2 trusted aides, even knew he was leaving the country. The first checkpoint was almost laughable. A distracted guard took his ID, glanced at the name, and handed it back without running it through the scanner. The X-ray machine beeped once when his backpack passed through, but the security officer, busy joking with a colleague, waved him on without checking. If this man had been carrying something dangerous, nobody would have known. And in that moment, Traoré realized just how vulnerable the system really was. He moved toward the boarding gate. The departure lounge was a mix of sleepy passengers and restless children. A loud TV was playing an old sitcom. He sat in a corner, reading a tattered paperback novel. Every few minutes, his eyes scanned the room. A man in a gray suit who kept checking his phone. A woman pretending to read but glancing up too often. Were they just travelers or something more? At one point, a little boy dropped his toy truck near Traoré's feet. As he bent down to return it, the boy's mother froze, staring at his face. "You look like someone I've seen on TV," she whispered. Traoré smiled politely. "People say that sometimes." She shrugged and walked away, unknowingly brushing off the chance to blow his cover. The boarding announcement came. Passengers lined up, shuffling forward with passports and boarding passes in hand. When it was Traoré's turn, the attendant scanned his ticket without looking up. No questions, no raised eyebrows, just a beep, and he was inside the jet bridge. On the plane, he took a seat in economy, a window seat midway down the cabin. To his left, a university student returning home for the holidays. To his right, a businessman already glued to his laptop. He could feel the quiet hum of the engines, the pressurized air filling the cabin. It felt almost normal. Halfway through the flight, a passenger walking down the aisle stopped in front of him. "You look so familiar. Are you an actor?" they asked. Traoré laughed. "No, I'm afraid not." Later, a flight attendant leaned down and studied his face a little too long before asking what he wanted to drink. Was she suspicious or just curious? Either way, he kept his answers short, his head slightly turned toward the window. When the plane touched down, the runway glistened from recent rain. At the arrival gate, police officers were waiting, but for someone else. A drug smuggler, perhaps. Traoré simply walked past them, his backpack over one shoulder, his pace calm but steady. Within minutes, he was outside in the city. Free, unnoticed, mission intact. Hours later, when news outlets revealed that the President of Burkina Faso had been spotted in the country, airport officials were thrown into panic. They reviewed CCTV footage, freezing the moment he passed their checkpoints. They had failed to recognize or stop one of the most high-profile figures in Africa. The chief of airport security resigned within a week. In a later interview, Traoré said, "It is not enough to protect leaders. We must protect everyone with the same vigilance. If I can walk through unchecked, so can someone with dangerous intentions." For him, the trip had been a personal mission, but for the world, it was a wake-up call. Somewhere in the archives of that airport's security office, the footage still exists. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful man in the room is the one you don't notice.